Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Da 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 da! You sound insane. You realize that? Yeah. The whole world gone crazy! Seriously? Yeah. It's showtime.
Welcome back in, Man Fam, to the Mad About Movies podcast. And this week, we're talking all things Rambo. For the very first time in the history of the show, we're talking about Rambo. It's hard to believe after 500 plus, basically 600 plus now, including the bonus episodes we've done, that we've never really talked Rambo First Blood, Second Blood, Third Blood, 10th Blood, anything like that yet. So here we are, long overdue. The occasion being Rambo 5, Last Blood.
Last Blood.
And we're going to do all things Rambo, like I said, with this episode. So welcome in. I am Kent, joined by Brian and Richard.
Hello.
And let's just get this thing rolling, guys. Rambo thoughts. This was one that, you know, I am a fan of Rambo, but it's never like in the top of mind when I think about like 80s movies that I love, action movies that I love, you know. And I don't know why, because it probably should be a lot higher considering how much I love Sly, how much I love action movies, how much I love, you know, movies with like military connection to them, you know. It's kind of like a half war movie, half like bro action movie, so it kind of crosses that line. The original First Blood, I mean, and so I don't think Rambo was ever a character that really met its potential on screen, other than, you know, First Blood was pretty solid, but I felt like the potential of Rambo was much greater than what it ended up being cinematically. You know, for me, Rambo should just be MacGruber. You know, honestly, it should be ex-military guy that they call when they need help, and he just wrecks shop, and it's fun, and there's humor involved, and it needs to be self-aware. And so that's my hardest thing to kind of get around with Rambo, is that it takes itself a little bit too seriously, where it should be, you know, all in, you know, what Stallone's doing with the Expendables, he should be doing with Rambo. And, you know, for the character to go out on this note is really sad, honestly. You know, it's such a dud of a movie. It has no real place in what I think about with Rambo, other than like they came up with the title Last Blood, so we need to use that because it's a good title, you know. And it would be a shame for a movie not to be called Last Blood, for the last one to be called Last Blood, you know? That seems like the only logical reason for this thing to kind of end this way, other than, you know, him literally riding off into the sunset in the most obvious way possible when you would see the trailer. But that being said, you know, I do have love for the character. I just don't think like the potential of the character was ever met, you know. I always associate Rambo with the headband, and he doesn't really use that ever, you know, other than a couple times throughout this whole series. And I feel like that really defined the character. Like, it would have been such a cool moment for that to be in this movie, you know, for him to like go back to those roots and do that whole thing. But at the end of the day, it just feels like Sly grasping for air at the end of his career, and it's sad, but you know, I still do like First Blood, and I always will. But Brian, what's kind of your background on this and thoughts on what Last Blood brought us?
I'm with you. I think Rambo the character, I wrote about this a little bit in our newsletter last month, and you can go to our website and check out the archives on that if you care. I ranked the Rambo movies, and in the intro I made the case that the character Rambo is so much more relevance, not the right word, but like he's a little bit more significant. He has more staying power than the movies do by a pretty fair stretch. That character is really cool and kind of interesting, and you could like talk about, you could just say the word, Rambo to anybody our age or older for sure. And I think I think the generation at least behind us, and everyone knows who you're talking about, even though most people probably haven't seen those movies. Like probably most people younger than us, or maybe even in our generation, haven't seen the Rambo movies, and certainly haven't seen them or know them well enough to be able to tell you the difference between Rambo First Blood and Rambo 2 and Rambo 3, and then the reboot in 2008 and all that. The movies themselves aren't nearly as significant culturally as just the character is, which is a very interesting phenomenon. I'm sure there are other comparisons or parallels to that, but that one it really stands out to me because I'm with you. Like I always say, man, I kind of like the Rambo movies. Yeah, they're fun. That's not something that it's not like I rewatch them all the time, but yeah, I like the Rambo movies. I rewatched them 2 or 3 weeks ago for this movie and for the blog that I wrote and stuff. And I was like, I definitely don't think I've ever seen Rambo 3 for sure. And I'm not sure I ever saw Rambo 2. And I've only seen First Blood a couple of times in my life. And it's an odd kind of unique experience to be like, yeah, totally, Rambo's cool. And then you watch them like, I don't really remember any of this. And I'm not sure that these are particularly good movies. I don't think that the Rambo reboot over a decade ago was a bad idea at all, and I don't think this movie is a bad idea in its existence. I think it is a very, very bad idea in its execution and the writing and the plotting and pretty much everything that happens in the whole movie. This was awful. I mean, just an absolute train wreck of a movie, pretty much from the first scene. I was not expecting, that the last one surprised me with how hyper violent it was, and that was nothing compared to this movie in that term. This was super. This was like a Saw movie in some places, and didn't quite see that coming. Not sure what the point of the whole movie is. You mentioned, Kent, the idea that Sly, who we all love Sly, that he's kind of grasping at straws and just trying to pull one more rabbit out of the hat, out of the Rocky / Creed hat. And boy, not what, certainly not what he was going for. I don't think anybody associated with this movie should put this one on the resume. This is real bad, and it is a bummer. Again, because of the character, because of how omnipresent culturally the character has been. This is not the way that I would like to see that character go out, because this sucks. This is just a super terrible movie. But more on that in a bit. Richard, what's your background with the old Rambo, and how you feel on this one?
Well, back in the day, and by the day, of course, was the Thursday. But you were kind of either a Stallone guy or a Schwarzenegger guy, and I always liked Stallone. Not to say,
oh man, I was always Arnie.
That's fair.
That's me. Like, I always think of Arnie when I think of these types of movies, and I don't know, like, maybe if Rambo was Arnie, it would have met its like
it's
cheesy
called
potential.
Commando.
Like, yeah, basically, you're right. But I don't know. There was never like a sense of humor about oneself with these movies, and everything Arnold does kind of has that vibe, and maybe that's what this is missing.
I always just thought the writing that he did with some of his stuff was always kind of interesting, and I don't know. I just always liked him a little more. I wasn't anti-Arnie. Obviously, nothing that other than Rocky is.
No, you're anti-Arnie. It's cool.
I know.
You hate his politics.
I'm a big Gray Davis. Big Gray Davis supporter. That's a joke for 3 people. That's what you recalled. So I've always loved Stallone, especially Drive, or is it Driven? Driven, the one with him and Kit Pardue. Which one was it?
Yeah.
Was it Driven?
Driven.
That's the only other movie I've ever seen of his, but I love Stallone. No. No, I always liked, I don't know why. I think my mom liked Sly. It was a lot of over the top in our house back in the day. I just, always dug in Rambo, Rocky, obviously. And Rambo was always cool. I think First Blood was like one of the first like violent action movies I rented at Blockbuster as a kid, with buddies on a Friday. So you grow these sort of tribal team allegiances, and so I'm always been a Sly guy, and I do like this character. I like some of these films, even when they're cheesy, they're fun, and they're so like you said, Brian. I think that's a really interesting point that the character is so much more prevalent than these films are. You look at something. I mean, MacGruber is parodying this.
Yeah, totally.
Totally that, and like Cliffhanger a little bit, that opening scene, but like it's totally this kind of archetype, and it's parodied across it. And I don't mean MacGruber the be all end all, obviously it is, but a lot of things have always either derived from this or parodied this. And it's a thing you kind of know in the zeitgeist, even if you don't know the films. And even when they're silly, I think 2 and 3 tend to go that way. First Blood's a pretty cool movie. But then the is it John Rambo? Is it the fourth one?
It's just Rambo.
Oh, it's just Rambo. Okay. Yeah. That's right. It was Rocky Balboa, and then that kind of, and it was just kind of derivative of that Rocky movie right before it, kind of trying to recapture that buzz that he got for that because he kind of disappeared for a while. But it's fine. I'm with you, Brian. Hey, this is something that should be pretty easy to pull off. A great Rambo movie is hard to pull off, but it's just a fine Rambo movie should be pretty easy to pull off. I'm fine doing it. The budget seems smart and all that. And for what, Sly's made some really great movies and some really bad ones, and add this to it. And this is just so bleak and not fun and awful and dreary and creepy and all the things. It's just, bad, cheesy bad can be fun in a movie like this, but this was such an unpleasant theatrical experience. And so corny in all the wrong ways. It's just a real miss, and that's a bummer because you don't know, especially coming off Creed and things like that. You'd like for Sly to kind of have a second win. He was so good in those films, and this is using that capital on this is a bummer.
I completely agree, and this is a project that apparently was in the oven for a long time. He was supposed to have kind of made this right around the time at the end of the last Rambo movie, and had various stages of production along the way, and several times it was going to be made, and then it wasn't, and it was going to be made, and then it wasn't, and the studio wanted to do this human trafficking story with him, but he always wanted it to be more of a war movie again, like him going to some war-ravaged part of the world and helping out. But they have way more of a human interest story in mind for it. And for me, with Last Blood, as we get into specifics about Last Blood, that's where it lost me for this. That's where this movie lost me. It was just so slow, so much dialogue, so much family drama about characters that we don't really care about at all. I don't. I understand she wants her dad back from Mexico, but we don't need like 8 scenes to talk about why he's important and all that. I mean, it's just like get Rambo, get him some guns, get him some booby traps set, and we're good. And it takes so long for that moment to get there in the movie, and then when it does, it's just like such a dud, and it's overly violent. You touched on it, and it doesn't feel earned at all. It doesn't feel like Rambo's last hurrah in any way, like the stakes of the mission, the Mexican drug cartels or whatever. It just feels like a sad excuse to make a Rambo movie in almost every way. It feels like cash grabby. But it's sad because, Stallone was involved with this and co-wrote it and everything. And, does he think this is good?
he does.
Like that's like he's like really proud of like, this is the way I want this thing to end, is Rambo becomes a rancher and cowboy and that's it. Like,
that's part of the like I said at the outset, and we've all said, there's a lot of problems with this. One of the big problems, just from a storytelling standpoint, is this tends to have, I think this happens a lot more with books than it does in a series of movies or whatever. But you will find, I don't know, I feel like I've seen this a bunch with like sci-fi books, series of books that are wherein the author gets to a place where he or she loves or maybe not even cares about the character that they're writing so much that they mistake their interest in the character or obsession with the character even as everyone's interest or obsession in the character, and then the mythos of the character and the backstory and all this sort of stuff. Rambo, the last Rambo movie ends with him, I'm going to go back home and see my dad again and work the ranch and all that sort of thing. And that's fine. Like, honestly, that leaves it at a pretty decent place, because the last scene of, again, I rewatched it like 2 or 3 weeks ago. The last scene of that movie is him walking down the dirt road to this farm that they're at in this movie. And I think that was fine. That was fitting, but it doesn't mean that mass audiences, and even divide that down into like, define that as the however many million of people that saw Rambo in 2008, what percentage of them really give a rip about the person John Rambo and the stuff that he has devoted his life to and all this. And it's a fractional percentage. It is, all of us were there to see Rambo fight, shoot things shoot people with arrows. And it's part of the problem with this franchise has always been that Sly, I think, especially wants the character to have deeper meaning and for him to be involved in things that actually are that matter, that are significant in all this. And I get the impetus to want to do that with a character that you clearly really like. But the first movie, it had a little bit of something to say culturally, because it really was all about this guy went off to serve his country and comes back to a country that doesn't want him. And that movie actually did kind of touch on that cultural thing that was happening in this, a bad spot in our history pretty well, but it didn't do it because John Rambo was out there telling people they gotta, start taking veterans seriously or whatever. It's more of just like, let the movie play, and it'll comment on its own just by the way that this all goes out. And then these movies, as they go, they just get deeper and deeper into like, we got to have John Rambo be our moral center on everything, and we got to let him tell us how to, and it just doesn't work. And you add all those things together and you get to this place where, to me, maybe you guys disagree, but it seems to me like there's a pretty fundamental misunderstanding of what, or a misconnection between what Sly thinks John Rambo is and who the rest of us think John Rambo or care enough about John Rambo. And boy, that just hits hard, because you're right, dude. Like, it takes forever to get going. And then when it does, have we seen 5 worse paced movies than this over the last 7 years that we've been doing this show? I mean, good gracious. Brutal. Yeah.
Absolutely brutal. And it's sad because, you would have thought that Stallone would know better. Like, unless I have something really important to say, or there's like Ryan Coogler comes along and has a vision for this that's so, groundbreaking that we have to do it, like what happened with Rocky, that this shouldn't have been made at all. This does nothing but tarnish the legacy of Rambo, and it's a sad end to a great character, honestly. But I'm in favor of them like rebooting this character at some point, and Sly's been kind of campaigning to do a prequel of First Blood. I think that would be a really cool, kind of like the end of Vietnam, getting out of the war days of John Rambo would be a really cool movie. Kind of what happens in the war and after that. Kind of when he gets to where he is in First Blood. Would have been a really interesting way to go about this, and I don't think Rambo as a property is completely dead. I don't think it's like a Predator's situation or anything like that, The Predator or anything like that, where it's going to be at least a decade before they could probably revisit it, because of the taste it put in people's mouths. But at the same time, the creator of Rambo came out on Twitter and said, "This movie's a disgrace. I'm embarrassed for being associated with it." Like, literally tweeted that. And I'm sure Sly probably called him and was like, "Dude, what are you doing, man?" Like, I'm sure they're friends and like collaborated on this and everything, and that's never a good thing. But this is like right up there with the Goldfinch. Is like, should be easy, should have been kind of self-explanatory on what it could be, and shouldn't bomb. And this didn't bomb at all. It made $20 million, I think, opening weekend, and it'll probably end up making its money back and then some at the end of the day when the worldwide box office comes in. But it's certainly not. People have already forgotten about this movie, and it came out last week, so not what you want. But like I said, this movie shouldn't have come out unless they had something so fresh to bring to the table and some new way to do this. Other than it just feeling recycled and boring. It's just so boring. That was my main takeaway. And this shouldn't be boring. This should be like, we're going to blow something up every 10 minutes, and that's what's going to keep you in it. But, yeah, like, people buy tickets to this to see John Rambo shoot machine guns. And when, I don't know, not even 40 seconds of the movie contain that, it's not a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. And when
as
it is,
visceral as 2008 was, at least it was like, what you're going to get going in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I'm going to see a Rambo movie. I can't be upset that there was guns shooting people, It's like, either go all in on that or don't do it at all. But like, this couldn't decide if it wanted to be like an intense family drama, or like this was trying to be Narcos, but with Rambo, like really commenting on like the drug cartel and like human trafficking and things like that, and kidnapping and all of what's going on in Mexico, but with John Rambo.
Yeah.
And a retired John Rambo who doesn't really want to do anything.
Right.
He's kind of angry. Like, I laughed out loud at the scene where Gabriella or whoever it is comes back, and like Maria, I don't know which one it was, comes back to him and says like, she's gone to Mexico. They kidnapped her. And he like gets up and like throws the thing against the wall and like storms out, remember, to like go save her. I was like, that was the most cheesy Sly moment maybe ever in his career. It's just like,
way overwrought, big time.
It was rough, man. But yeah, that's my main takeaway is how boring it was, and how nobody seemed to like say, hey, we could just make a throwback to fun 80s action movies. Let's do that. And this feels like so 2019, and that's what's sad. Like, it feels like it's trying to fit the mold of what, they did with Sicario and things like that, and John Wick and all those movies, rather than just like make a fun Rambo movie.
Yes, totally. And once it gets to the actual, like, okay, now we're just gonna have him going all action hero, it's pretty gnarly, dude. Like, the whole thing with the dude's collarbone, and it just goes from there, and you're just like, this is not. I want to see. I mean, if I'm going to a Rambo movie, you're right. You kind of said it. Like, I'm expecting the violence and stuff, but not necessarily. I don't know that there's a whole bunch of people who are like big Rambo fans that were like, yeah, I need him to torture people in very visceral ways. Like, I'm not sure that's truly what we were looking for from the character. And again, and I'll hand it off to you, Rich. Like, Good gracious. I could not get over how horribly paced the movie was and how it just goes from, because it feels like it takes an hour to get to the plot of the movie, and then the next hour is just, or 30 minutes or however, is just running through so much stuff. Like there's so much stuff that's done in montage form. And that again, Kate, you made a great point. Like that would be, I think, acceptable if this was doing kind of an 80s throwback fun action movie kind of vibe, but instead we're supposed to be treating Rambo seriously. And if you're going to ask that I treat him seriously, I'm going to need you to take the plotting and the way that we move through a movie seriously as well. That's a you got to meet me halfway on that. That's a partnership sort of thing. And they didn't do that.
Right. Man, let's write a fun version of Rambo, man, and bring it to Sly and be like, it doesn't have to end this way, man. It doesn't. It doesn't have to be like this. Have you guys seen Kung Fury?
No, but I know what you're talking about.
They're making that into a movie next year, and Arnold's going to be in it. It's like the perfect parody of like those 80s movies. It's so funny. You need to watch it. I have it on the fax machine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a short. I think it's like 20 minutes long, but it's so ridiculous. But yeah, they're making it into a movie next year, so look for that to be a sleeper hit next year. Kung Fury the movie. They're bringing back a lot of the 80s action stars for that, and Arnold plays the president in it, so it's supposed to be pretty fun. But yeah, I would have wanted that with this. I would have wanted it to be really self-aware and not this, basically. So I don't have much more to say on this other than to give grades. I'm disappointed in it. The opening scene where he's like rescuing someone off a river that's like overflowing, and it's really strange kind of intro. And
yeah, why does he have all these tunnels? I
think they're drug tunnels. Okay,
but why is he building them or excavating them?
I didn't understand that either. It's like, did he dig these, or are these like already here? And like
there's like a line pretty early where he's talking to his his adopted daughter that's like, what do I tell them, my friends, when they ask why these tunnels? Just tell them your uncle's crazy and he likes to build. And it's like, what?
That's how you explain that.
Go ahead and give me a line there of why we're doing this. I get that it's a MacGuffin. I understand how this works. I'm not dumb, but you do have to go halfway. You have to, if you're going to ask me to completely suspend reality, be like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense that he's just building tunnels out there in the desert. You're going to have to at least give me one sentence of exposition to do that. And like, I think y'all agree with me on this. That's a pretty minor thing. It is, whatever. It's not the end of the world. It's a freaking Rambo movie, so whatever. But that's, to me, at least, that's a microcosm of everything that is wrong with this movie and how sloppy and lack of attention to detail and just like everything that is wrong with the movie is kind of that. It's that kind of thing right there. You're just like, guys, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right.
And boy, and then the Home Alone ending that was one of the less pleasant 20 minutes
like stabs
I've ever
the guy
had
in the heart.
my life.
It's like ridiculous.
Yeah, not enjoyable.
It's not justified.
Not fun.
Like no one's like on your side with Rambo for that. Like it's just like,
yeah.
I don't know the line. He has a one-liner there that's so epic too.
Yeah,
it's like,
I'm gonna rip your heart out,
yeah,
and then he
like,
does it, and you're like, oof, I don't know if I'd. Again, like you said earlier, Richard, like if that's MacGruber, we think that's hilarious because MacGruber's in on the joke, and I don't know that Sly and Rambo himself, the character, I don't think they're in on the joke, and that starts to be. This was about the longest 90-minute movie I've been in a long time. I was checking the watch pretty quickly, and that's a bummer. That just shouldn't have happened in this kind of movie.
Absolutely, man. I think we should hit grades and hit a recommend and call this a day. How about that? Again, if you want to hear our movie news episode, we talk a lot about the MCU, we talk Star Wars, all Jurassic Park casting and things like that. So check out that episode if you want more from us this week, other than our VIP episode, which is dropping this weekend. But let's grade this one out. I'm going to patent this at an F-. For the end of Rambo, one of the worst movies I've seen this year, for sure. And, keeping up the tradition at this time, like I said, with The Predator, of franchises that I love and want something from that are getting completely destroyed towards the end of September. So count on something else I love next year being destroyed at this time. So same time, same channel, this time next year. We'll see you then.
Yeah.
So F-. For me.
Jaden O'Catless. F- for me. Still a terrible grade. I'm not gonna patent.
Yeah, you don't want
Sly's
to have
in
to pay me the royalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite worth the royalty, but it's still an F-. Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I'll pay. It's a pretty substantial rate, but it's worth it. It's an F-. That Hellboy is one of the very, very worst movies I've ever seen in my life, and it's definitely not as bad as that. But that might be the only movie I've seen this year that is worse than this. Especially just kind of considering, again, this should be very difficult to not be like a C+ kind of movie. It's just they way overreached and overcomplicated something that didn't need to be done at all, and that bothers me as much as just how horrible the movie is and overall. So F-. For me.
All right, that's Last Blood. It'll be on DVD very soon. Don't worry if you haven't seen it. You'll be able to see it in a couple weeks.
Only sure. DVD though, not digital.
Yeah, They can't afford the Blu-ray release.
No 4K for sure.
Yeah. None of that. All right, well, let's move on and hit a weekly recommend.
Weekly recommends.
Richard, what you got?
Yeah, I'm going to recommend a book. I've been on a tear this year with the nonfiction. I'm going to recommend a book that is going to be. Did I do Showtime yet? I can never keep track of what I've done.
No,
I don't think so. No.
Showtime is a book that's going to be an HBO series next year, so it's for those of you that like that kind of stuff. Before it comes to screens, it's worth a read. It's about the 1980s Lakers, or late 70s through 80s Lakers, which maybe not be for everyone, but it's like peak LA. The whole scene was insane, and a lot of characters and drugs and sex and all the things you would want in an HBO show, probably. So the book's excellent. It's really well written, well reported, and a lot of great things on the record. And I highly recommend Showtime by Jeff Perlman, same guy who did the Boys Will Be Boys Cowboys book. Kent, pretty good long form sports
that is
journalist.
a read.
Yeah,
Boys Will Be Boys.
Boys Will Be Boys. Another recommend for another day.
Doing some research for my last doc, and I was like, if I could put literally 1/100th of the things in this book in the doc, I would win like an Oscar.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
That's a good recommend too. Boys Will Be Boys.
Yep, totally. But this same kind of thing with this, just sub Magic and Kareem for, Michael Irvin and Leon Lett. Brian, what about you? What you got?
Yes, I had a book, but since you did a book, I'll do a TV show. We are in the midst of, or at least I am in the midst of trying to get through all of the various TV pilots. And God bless us all, because it's been pretty rough. Obviously on the network side of things.
What's the one with the fat dude, and the nurse?
Oh, Bob Hart's Avashola.
One, yeah, that one's good.
Guys, that was tough. 22 minutes, let me tell you. Still might be better than Carol's second act, which really made me question some things about my life. But anyway, thank goodness. I love doing that episode. I think it's fun, and the listeners always enjoy it too, because it is just us, just heavy sighing and like, boy, I don't know how to get through this. It's pretty tough. I'm thankful for the streaming services that have come along and give us good shows to watch. I watched the pilot episode. I'll be honest. I thought that this series was going to be really well done, and that it was just super not going to be for me. I'm talking about Unbelievable on Netflix, but I watched the whole thing in like 2 days. It's really, really good, and it's tough, and it's not it's super non enjoyable in some places, but it almost feels like, and I hate when people say this, so I apologize to myself, but it almost feels like important television. Like it's very close to something that should be like you have to watch this kind of territory, because it really, I don't know that I've seen a piece of fiction that handles rape and the way in which that is often investigated and things like that as well, and with as much like just sobering reality as this show does. And it has some of the best acting I've seen this year. Tony Collette's great, and Merritt Weaver's great, and man, it's so good. It's so good. And I'm not a huge crime guy, especially when it's really intense and real in some places, and that was a little bit much for me. But it's so good that I was able to kind of get through that. But I highly recommend it. It's one of the, I feel like this is going to be one that's up for awards come Emmy season next year, and deservedly so. It's really, really good. So anyway, it's called Unbelievable on Netflix.
I don't have Netflix anymore, else I'd check that out, but I'll have to seek it out on my own outside of that. But I've been waiting for something on Netflix that's going to be worth my
I'll send you the laser
my
disc.
time
I copied it.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Good. Yeah, fax it over. But yeah, I've been waiting for something to come along that's not, Stranger Things, that I can watch on Netflix, and I'll have to check that out. But yeah, that's encouraging. That's always encouraging that they're doing worthy content over there in terms of like cultural commentary and things like that. So I'm going to recommend a documentary for our movie lovers out there that I caught a while ago, but I just rewatched it and really enjoy it. I think you guys would like it too. It's called 7852, and it's about the impact of the shower scene in Psycho and what it means to movie history, kind of the impact that it had on the culture at the time. And it's really, really interesting. So if you like movies, and 7852 refers to, it was 78 setups and 52 cuts in the actual shower like murder scene. That's what we're talking about. Just the scene itself in Psycho, what that meant and its impact. Really interesting documentary that breaks it down on how it was perceived and how Hitchcock really only did the movie to do that scene and to catch people off guard, and he really only did it as a joke, but people got really upset about it and things, Really interesting kind of insight on that whole thing, and just the impact afterwards. Like, I had no idea that Martin Scorsese cut the final fight of Raging Bull to the same cut as Psycho, the shower scene, like the exact same cuts. He just lined it up and set it up the same way and did that, and it really works with Raging Bull too. So there's something just kind of prophetic about the way this scene is cut together that a lot of filmmakers have tried to do, and they touch on Gus Van Sant in this, and he talks about, I think the editor of the Gus Van Sant movie is in this, talking about, them trying to recreate it and what that was like, and trying to make it work and all that. So really interesting documentary. If you're into, documentaries about making movies, this is one of the better ones I've seen. It's really interesting. 7852 is what it's called. It came out 2 years ago, 2017, and it's worth your time if you're into that. So
sweet.
Check that out. That's my recommend.
Very nice.
Okay, sweet. Check out that episode with the movie news, rumors, rumblings, if you want more of that talk. And again, VIPs, stay tuned later this week for 4 Weddings and a Funeral. It should be a really fun conversation for that 1994 classic. But, all right, until next time, where can I find you, Brian, online?
Yeah, you can find me on the Twitter at bgill12. You can find my writing at madaboutmoviespodcast.com and the Mad About Movies Podcast newsletter. Richard, where can we find you?
You can find me on social and at Richard Barden, and you can find me at my new website, canbabiesdrinkredbull.com. Bought the domain. Eat it. You snooze, you lose. Now, you can find me at madaboutmoviespodcast.com.net.org.gov.tv. Kent, where can I find you?
You can find me on the Twitter and all social media at Kent Garrison, kentgarrison.com, and find us at madaboutmoviespodcast.com. Leave us comments at madaboutmovies on Twitter. Definitely email us, shoot us messages, get on that Discord if you're a VIP. We keep the conversation going off the air, and it's a lot of fun. So
chat with us anytime.
Chat with us
if you're
on
a
there.
VIP.
Yes, good times. But until next week, we're joined by Batman Shane to talk about Todd Phillips and Joker. I'm sure both of those will be talked about.
No one laughs anymore.
Yeah, we're too woke. Until then, we'll see you at the cinema.
Hey, baby, I hear the blues are calling. Tossed salads and scrambled eggs. And maybe I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe, but I got you pegged. But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. Scrambled eggs all over my face.
They're making me yah-yah. Your salads and scrambled eggs.
They're calling again.